Hi everyone, my name is Mark Wilkinson from Hillmont Associates. We are health and safety, environment and quality consultancy based here in the UK, but we also service clients all around the world. We've travelled to many different countries and we have a mission and a purpose, that is to make sure that everyone gets home safely at the end of their shift, at the end of their work. And also to protect companies with governance and assurance, etc. So we have a number of colleagues that work with us, and I'm delighted that Ian Collins has joined us. Ian has just arrived in the UK, and we're going to talk a bit more about training today. But Ian, give us a little bit of background and obviously where you were before and the adjustment that's gone on.
Yeah, sure. Mark, great to be here. Great to be with yourself and Hillmont. And I've been in the UK for about a month now, having come in from spending lockdown in Bali in Indonesia. So I've come from the warm jungles to a bit of a cool and dreary London, but I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, there's worse places to be in, I think.
Yeah, there were worse places to be, yeah, that's for sure.
But yeah, so your background is training, obviously. I know plenty about you and what you've been doing around the world, but give us a bit of a flavour.
Sure. I started my career about 20 years ago, actually in training development, and that was the early 2000s, and worked for a very large training development organisation in Western Australia, where I'm from. And whilst I love the work and I love making a difference with people, at the time it wasn't lucrative financially. So, and West Australia was going through a very big resources boom. And I saw opportunities to go off and make a quick buck in the mining industry. So went out there very, very fresh, didn't really have a clue what I was doing, and joined a diamond drilling operation. And it took me about a week to figure out that we weren't actually drilling for diamonds, but that was a reference to the drill bit that we were using. So that gives you a bit of a clue on my lack of knowledge going into the industry. But I loved it. And I loved what we call in Australia the hard yakka, just, really having a good solid day's work, going home, having a beer afterwards with the guys. And I became a driller in that industry and eventually went offshore. And the main reason for going offshore is because whatever you worked on an oil rig, you had off. And so I joined, again, started right at the bottom as a roustabout and worked my way up to the drill floor. But I had a couple of experiences early on in my career, both in mining and then in oil and gas, where I saw people get hurt. I got hurt myself, and I saw a death in the shipyards in Singapore that shocked me. And whilst the death itself shocked me, it shocked me the guys' response to it as well, where it was almost like this is part and parcel with the work that we do, and sort of get used to it. And I didn't really like that. And I saw a real, it got to me that not everyone got to go home safely. So I pivoted and I went into more of the health and safety space. And at the time, our rig got into quite a bit of trouble as well with the regulator, and people were getting hurt. Fortunately, no one got killed on our rig, but people were getting hurt, and we had a couple of environmental sort of mishaps to the point where the regulator said, you got to tighten the belt here, or we're going to take away your license to operate. Yeah. And it was that point at which a company came out called Equilibrium and actually did some coaching and introduced me to the concept of how our personalities often drive some very predictable behaviors, particularly when it comes to how people can get hurt. And the impact of this work on our rig was monumental. And I saw a cultural shift. We often think of culture that it takes a long time to transform, but once particularly the leaders start adopting some behaviors and some language, it cascades throughout the whole organization. And that's exactly what I saw. And it was just such a monumental shift. We became one of the highest performing and safest operations on the West Australian coast at the time. And since then, that's been my speciality. Both, working in the world of personality tendencies and how that drives predictable behaviors, and coaching people around how to manage that. And then also for the past 4 or 5 years in the world of human and organizational performance, and understanding how our system often influences people's behavior as well, and addressing things at a more systemic sort of point rather than just looking solely at the individual. So that's been a real fascinating sort of journey, and really excited to now be able to offer that through Hillmont, both here in the UK and, like you say, throughout Europe and throughout the rest of the world.
Absolutely. I mean, I was fascinated by my own personal development, and then also then bringing that into the corporate world where I worked for the last 10 years. And I think it's absolutely incredible, you know, the process that you've been through there, and also the tools that you've used, a la Equilibria that you've mentioned, and then of course Aero and Fisher Improvement Technologies, which I want you to tell me a bit more about. But the bottom line is that I think it's fascinating that the more we get to know ourselves, the more effective we can be in the world. And so you mentioned a bit about the needs and obviously the benefits. Now, the needs for me there were that you, when you went on and you were drilling for diamonds, right? You know, you didn't know what you were doing, you know, and that those people going into training, going into work and not being trained. And actually then, you know, thinking that you know, they kind of know what's going on, and they're literally just being thrown in at the deep end. I mean, thankfully, so much of that, certainly here in the UK, you know, does not occur anymore through all the stringent stuff we've put in place for health and safety to make sure we're looking after people. We have a great culture here in London and in the UK. But the need for the training is obviously, you know, you can't allow that to happen. You can't allow people, I mean, you're talking like, you know, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, mate, you know. But, you know, the point is now, you know, it's thankfully that doesn't happen as often. Would you agree?
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. And there's also I find there's a bit of a fine line between bogging people down too much in bureaucracy as well, to the point where, certainly saw this in a lot of places around the world, where it's almost like we wrap people in cotton wool a bit too much, to the point where they stop really thinking about the task at hand, thinking there's sufficient layers of protection in place when there really aren't. A piece of paper is not going to you know, prevent you from getting hurt out there. Yes, it's going to reduce the likelihood, but we still need to, you know, there definitely is a really strong health and safety culture here, and we still need to be able to train people to reduce the likelihood that they're going to make a mistake, particularly on ones that can have catastrophic consequences. Yeah. So there's still a lot of scope for training development and ongoing training development, and particularly work with leadership and them understanding the influence that they can have on the culture. And you know, that's typically what we see out on the shop floor is very representative of the leaders of the organization and their attitude towards it.
I think you're absolutely right. People can disengage if you overdo it. Yeah. And I think there's a certain way to engage people. If you train people well and you get them interested and buzzed up, you know, about stuff, then that's much easier to be able to deliver that. And you're right about the leadership. The leadership comes from the top, but it cascades through the company. But it's that the leader of the company is switched on enough to like try some of the tools that we're going to talk about in a moment. Yeah. If the leader of the company is switched on enough, then you've got an opportunity then to really influence some change. And the benefits are beautiful from what you said, even in your intro there. You know, I mean, we've discussed before, I know about case studies of actual cultures, you know, changing to the benefit of incidents going down, if not going to nil.
Yeah.
Productivity shooting up, so people being happier, more productive, and better in their jobs, better at work, I would say. And also staff retention, you know, being improved.
Yeah.
Because people are happier.
Yeah, people are happier. And it's almost, you know, when we engage an organization to work with it, it's almost like a byproduct, that staff retention. Yes, we have a major influence and impact on errors going down, incidents going down, productivity going up, exactly like you say, quality going up. One of the big ones as well is a decrease in the amount of rework that needs to be done. So when people aren't making as many errors, they're not having to do the same task over and over again. So that's huge. The staff retention, it's incredible. And some of the biggest impact that I've seen with organizations is when something doesn't quite go to plan, most organizations are typically out there looking at who they can sort of name, blame, and shame. That is it's almost like an automatic human response to a degree. if it wasn't me, it's got to be someone. So we're looking for blame. And when workers are out there thinking they're under the microscope and there's a witch hunt for when they make a mistake, it's not a very, the culture's not great. People don't want to be there necessarily. They're not as engaged. But when people know that if something bad happens, an organization is going to use a process to understand how their system may have drove that event before they go out there pointing fingers at anyone, the level of engagement of the people is so much greater. They know that the organization is looking out for them just as much as they're looking out for each other. So staff retention goes through the roof because it's a culture that people want to be a part of, where they know that the organization has their back.
I think that fear like ripples in a pond. If fear goes through an organization, and it will start at the top, if not near the top, but that fear will go through an organization and it will end up with the guy actually doing the job on the shop floor, on the site or whatever. But if they're not engaged, and they're not going to report to you, or they're not going to, they're going to sort of don't blame me type stuff. And then that just becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and it really does. And to the point where things like near misses aren't reported because it's no one wants to report anything that may be considered their fault. So if we don't understand the near misses, those are things that really can help us in pointing to where there are flaws in our system that are just waiting for all the conditions to line up, that we then have something catastrophic happen. So we know when an organization has a really strong culture reporting things like near misses, near hits, it points to there's some really good leadership, there's a really good culture in the organization.
You're right. And so that's the benefit, that's the need for the training. Tell us a bit more about what you deliver, how you deliver it, and then how people can get in touch with Hillmont Associates in order for them to experience this training. Yeah,
absolutely. We're blessed in that we have partnerships through Hillmont. We've developed partnerships with both Equilibria, whose core product is the e-colors, the personality tendency piece. There's so many applications it starts with the self-awareness with the e-colors, but there's so many applications, whether it's around safety, whether it's around teamwork, whether it's around communication, leadership. So there's a whole suite of services that we can now deliver in partnership with Equilibria. And we're also licensed to deliver human and organizational performance through Fisher Improvement Technologies. And this is about error reduction, error minimization, error elimination. Human and organization performance as a science was developed in the aftermath of some pretty major nuclear events, 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, where some really prominent thought leaders got together and said, well, if we put someone else at the panel that day, would they have taken the same action? If your answer to that is yes, you haven't got a problem with your individual. There's something wrong in your system. So we're now able to offer a more holistic, systemic approach to managing incidents through human and organizational performance. And as we mentioned before, this has a major impact on error reduction, on quality improvement, on productivity, as we make less and less mistakes. So we're looking at how the organization and their systems, there may be flaws in that system. At the same time, we train workers how to reduce the likelihood that they can make a mistake. There's a whole suite of delivery mechanisms with that. At the same time, we can offer incident analysis. So doing better incident analysis, looking at things from a human and organizational performance perspective, and written procedural excellence. So most people who are out there writing procedures don't know that there's about 25 different error traps that they can actually be writing into their procedures that then increase the likelihood that someone out on the floor is actually going to make a mistake. So we can train people how to write better procedures that then reduce the likelihood that people are going to make mistakes out there in the field.
I think every organization is going to be interested in error reduction. I mean, at the end of the day, human error is often the root cause for a problem, and sometimes, you know, if you don't understand your tendencies, like I did my Equilibria PDI many years ago, and one of my tendencies was that I jump in to help other people.
Yeah.
And that jumping in to help other people actually could get me seriously injured or killed in a high risk environment. When I read that, I was like, oh, right, okay, I need to look at this a bit more in a bit more detail. But error reduction in any environment, high risk, medium risk, you know, anywhere where there's construction. We do a lot of work in construction, in energy, also in airports and events. Now, obviously, airports and events are a little bit quieter at the moment, but these areas are, you know, construction and energy particularly, still booming, still working the whole way through this 2020 strange year, but construction has kept working in this country the whole way through, and energy is obviously still being used everywhere. So, you know, these are still high risk environments, and that error reduction piece, I think, is absolutely vital. And the more companies that get in touch with us and we can actually like discuss it with them, talk it through with them, and then actually, you know, give them the benefits for their organization, which are, you know, multiple.
Yeah. There's one thing you said there where human error is often cited as a cause, and definitely in some cases it is the cause. I would even argue more so it's actually more of a consequence, and it's a consequence of how the system, because if most people don't go to work to get hurt every day,
no,
that's not why they go to work. So if something happens, something must have been going on at the time that had that action make sense to that person. So the human error is often more of the consequence rather than the cause itself, which is exactly what we're doing with human and organizational performance. Because if we just, there's a great saying in this, we call it HOP, human and organizational performance. If you fix a person, you might fix the problem for now, but if you fix the system, you fix it for good. And that's what we want to help organizations do, is create more robust, resilient, error tolerant systems, because at the end of the day, we are human, we're fallible, we're going to make mistakes. So we better have good systems in place that can absorb the error, and so it doesn't turn into something catastrophic. And that's what we can help organizations do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's such a positive thing. And you've been doing this for many years around the world, around the globe. Now you've landed here in London with us, which we're absolutely over the moon about, Ian. So it's great to have you here. And this wealth of knowledge that you've got is fantastic. And so basically we want everyone to do the Hillmont HOP, yeah? I love it. Human organizational performance. I love it. And it's great. I mean, this is the juice for me. This is the juice for me for health and safety, for everything that I've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. You know, this is the bit. I love people and I love working with people. I don't particularly love paperwork and ticking boxes. Sometimes it has to be done. But really, the juice is actually working with the individuals. And I was talking with Rob Fisher the other day, and he's talking about those light bulb moments. When someone has one of those light bulb moments and you're just showing them something that, you know, holding up a little mirror to them or showing them something that they might not have seen before, or have you thought about it like that? You know, all of a sudden you can see something, a penny drop, and they go, oh, hang on a minute. Okay. And I love that. That's what I live for. I love that. Yeah. So I just want to say to you, it's so great to have you here, Ian. And I'm really looking forward to us like working together and really engaging as many people towards these trainings, and you know, everything that we offer is to benefit people, isn't it? It's to benefit the companies, it's to benefit the individuals, it's to lift the company up, and like we said, you know, incidents down, productivity up, and staff retention improving all the way. So that's fantastic. If you want to get in touch with us, all you've got to do is go to hillmontassociates.com. You can request our brochure there. You can get in touch with myself, Emma, Ian, or any of the team. We're here to help, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, Ian. You're a top fella.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate.